500.
G'day, this is Expand the Phantom Podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com, and you can subscribe to our podcast via YouTube or through your favorite podcast app. Please do not forget to give us a rating so others can find us. This is episode 285B, where we'll be discussing all the Frew publications from the last little while, starting from 1971, doing the 2000th issue, which is actually issue 1972, and of course Frew issue 1973. We'll also be looking at Frew's giant size number 29, which focuses on stories with a Brazilian connection. We also will be discussing the latest in the Phantom comics, which will be reviewed by Mikael, of course, and Christian will be reviewing the latest German comics. So thank you very much, fellas. It's been a while since I've been on a podcast. It's probably been over a month, I reckon. So if you don't remember my voice, I'm Steve. G'day, everyone. If you're watching me on video, you can see me waving. I'm back in the car studio again, and those fellas you can hear chuckling away in the background are Dan and Jermayn. Dan, how are you, mate?
Yeah, very good, mate. We're on school holidays here, and as a teacher, have enjoyed my first week away from the classroom, and yeah, it's been a heck of a week, but I'm sure we'll talk about at least a little bit of it. But yeah, good to be seeing you on the podcast again, mate. It does feel like a while.
It has been a while, and while you're a week into your holidays, mine have just started. So look forward to catching up. And Jermayn, how are you going there in your purple room?
Yeah, good. The wife tried to play a trick on me by turning the lights to purple, but the trick's on her because we're going to roll through the whole podcast with a purple tinge.
and very well suited. Both you fellas have had a bit of fun.
Yeah, supernova.
Yeah, it was sensational. So this time a week ago, we were at the Deus Cafe enjoying the Lee Falk Memorial Bangala Explorers Club dinner, having already been to Supernova that morning, and yeah, we're basically in the middle of the Phantom weekend. It was sensational. It's hard to believe it was a week ago already. Still, that means it's only 51 more weeks, and we're back there again.
Yeah, no, it was good. We will be having our wrap up of that event with the sounds, which will be the panel at Supernova, the speech from the dinner, and some other random little tidbits as well, which will be the next podcast, which will probably be released about a week to a week and a half after this podcast goes live. So hope people enjoy it. We've also got an article written by someone who attended the event for the first time. And that will be released around the same time as this podcast as well. So maybe that might whet your appetite as well while you wait for some of the sounds.
Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3 normal, for lack of a better word, Frew issues and one giant size this podcast, if I'm reading the run sheet correctly. The first cab off the rank is the latest in the Collector's Replica series. It's number 39, issue number 1971, and it's full of parts 1, 2, and 3 of the High Seas Highjacker by Lee Falk and Wilson McCoy. And of course, it also has a fourth story, which is The Spy Gang, once again by Lee Falk and Wilson McCoy. The cover is another collaboration between Glenn Ford and Paul Mason. If I look in the cover, and yes, very much so. It's the Collector's Replica. Did you guys read it?
No.
That was a loaded question, wasn't
it? Yeah. Look, I'm enjoying the covers, the collaborations between Paul Mason and Glenn Ford in terms of the new covers. They certainly beat the first 10, which were all of the bust. We've seen a few different iterations of the covers. It's good to. I did read through the message from the publisher, or as it really is, the historical explanation of the stories from Barry Stubbersfield, and he explains why it's called High Seas Hijacker, because that was mislabeled by the King Features archivist at the time in the 70s or something. I think I saw here. It's more well known by its actual name, The Governor and Seuj, and it's an absolute classic of the early early fandom stories. Of course, we like to read them in full and unedited and unabridged instead of the way that these are put together. But some classic artwork, some really iconic panels in amongst this story in particular.
Saw the original artwork for that cover on the weekend. It was done by canvas. It was probably about 1 meter high. It was a cracker of a piece. Looked really good in originally painted on canvas. Look, stories are classic. I will admit I do find it interesting about the whole titles and all that, and that's probably one thing that I do enjoy about the work that Barry does do, and how he's managed to get a hold of the archivist information from King Features. That's a treasure trove. So that's enjoyable to kind of see. This story is classic. So look, I don't really have much more to kind of say about it, but one of the interesting things was on the weekend, there was a couple of fans, and Dudley actually explained to a few of them why these replicas still exist and why they're popular. Not obviously amongst the people that are probably listening to this, but a lot of the older time fans, that this allows them a chance to kind of catch up with their schedule, but it also is one of their better selling issues as well. At the end of the day, they are there to make money, and you would be stupid if you stop producing a comic that is one of your better sellers.
Absolutely.
Well, they're going to be stopped producing it in, was it a few more years yet? 5 more years, maybe?
You know, I don't want to be an alarmist, but if we're still having a Frew comic by then, I'm sure they'll have another problem to address in a sense of what to do next. But, you know, I look forward to that. But yeah, like you said, there's still another 3-4 years.
Okay. Moving on to the special issue, 1972. What is so special about Frew issue 1972? I hear people ask. Yep, that was just my opportunity for
what
them to
special?
ask.
Sorry, Steve. I missed
It
my cue.
is. All good. It's actually the 2000th issue that Frew has published of the Phantom in its regular series. And I don't know if you're looking at my screen or not, but there is the cover done by Shane Foley.
Starge is the
The
colorist.
colorist, I'm assuming. Yeah. The book contains the Maharajah's Daughter, the Royal Hero of Man and Beast Part 3, and The Fence. Now we've got the Maharajah's Daughter and The Fence are both by Lee Falk. Wilson McCoy did Maharajah's Daughter, and Cy Barry has drawn The Fence. Royal Hero is a sequel to the Maharajah's Daughter, written by Pidde Andersson with art by Shane Foley. And of Man and Beast Part 3 is a continuation of the Andrew Constant and Jason Paulos collaboration with the Phantom by Gaslight series.
It's worth making mention that what I'm going to be showing on the screen is the black and white version and not the color version. Now, I just want to quickly make mention, what you'll see on the screen, if you're on YouTube, this will be really good. If you are listening to it on the podcast, you're going to have to use on audio, you're going to have to use your imagination a little bit. Now, if everyone turns to page 4, I just want to quickly raise this, and then I'll be interested to hear your thoughts, but also other people's thoughts. So if you're looking on the colored version, which is, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 panels across one line, yet this version of the scan is 3 across every line. In my opinion, I think the 3 across each line works a little bit better. They're a little bit more spaced. They're a little bit bigger, but what you would notice is in the Frew issue, they are 4 along. And it also, if you look at some of the panels as well, it also looks like some of the panels are being extended or chopped and stuff like that as well. So it's
In what,
intriguing.
the new one or the old one?
Oh, well, in both versions.
Right.
So if you're looking at, say, the elephant, we'll go the elephant. That one, I can say that word. If you're looking on the scan version, you don't see the elephant's feet, but in the 4th box on the first line, you see the grass below the feet as well. So it kind of gives you a bit of an idea of what's been chopped. Now, I will admit, I'm not sure which one is the original, whether the original is what we see on the screen or the original is what we see in the actual comic. But it's interesting that Frew have gone the 4 across, which one thing also means that there's going to be less pages that the story is going to appear on. I think the negative thing of that is that the actual panels are a little bit smaller.
So I think it's more set to the original, original setting, the original format, mainly because you can see more. Even though the panels are narrower, they've got that height, and so you've got extra bits going in there. I think it's more the original panel that's marked 831, and there's this box, this blank box in the top left-hand corner, and I was hoping that you'd had the original up, Germ, so I could see if there was anything written in that. But yeah, see this random white box in the middle, in the top left-hand corner of this. I thought, they've cut out the text or something in there, but there was nothing in there on yours either.
So if you look on every single first line, you will notice that there is that empty so-called box, like the text box that appears at the top, or the speech boxes have all been moved down as you look through the actual coloured comic and as you look through on the screen.
I noticed there was there quite often, but that was one on an extended panel, so that's what got me.
It stands out too when they've left it white. The other one,
like
is
on page 10.
Yeah.
Page 10's white. So yeah, look, I'm not 100% sure why that box is there. I can only think of that it could have something to do with maybe it had the Phantom by Lee Falk and Wilson McCoy, because that's what appeared on the first panel for each single day. The only reason I can think of that. This is really nerdy speak, so I'm sorry for those who
really
who don't enjoy this nerdum at the moment. But one of the other reasons why Frew have gone the 4 panels is if you're looking on YouTube, you'll see the panel that I'm at. If you're on audio only, on the page of the bottom of page 4, you'll see a double panel. Now, it's okay on here, but if that double panel was appearing on panel 3 and 4, so to speak, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. If you were going the 3, that would have to be split, or that would have to be edited the way that Frew have done it. So that, or the way that this comic has been done originally, which you can see on the screen. So that's another reason why I believe that Frew have decided to go 4. One, it saves paper, it saves the page count. It also means they don't have to edit if Wilson McCoy ends up deciding to do a double panel on panels 3 and 4. He doesn't have to split them. The alternative is you kind of read the comic landscape format, which we'll get to, I guess, when we discuss the giant size, because there is a story that's done in landscape. So it's a little bit of nerdy speak to start off the podcast, and so I hope people didn't get too bored by
that. Well, I'm sure they're used to it by now if they've listened to us before. A little synopsis about the Maharajah's daughter. So the Maharajah has been kidnapped, and his daughter is quite distressed and wants her father back. A couple of people said yes, or actually one in particular, her suitor, the Raja Simbal, says, I'll go, and if you agree to marry me, I will find your father. I will clear the jungle. I will kill everybody until I find your father. And well, Maharajah's daughter doesn't really want a bloodshed. Finally, the Phantom turns up and says, look, give me 3 days, I'll find him for you. And so from then on, the Phantom's looking for clues, and he's on the trail of finding the missing Maharajah. But in the end, we find out that the Maharajah's daughter is actually good friends with Diana. And so Diana comes along and adds another element to the search. It's a fun little story, but Diana has a big part to play in it. Did you enjoy the story, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. It's one of the early stories. It's the 22nd daily, and ran in 1944. So we often talk about stories that do or don't hold up, that have been written in the past. This one really does. I think the tale, you can sort of sense at times what people talk about with Lee Falk, in that he didn't necessarily have his conclusion planned out when he started writing. It does meander a bit in stages, and goes on a few goat tracks and that sort of thing as far as stories goes, and the chase for the Maharajah and that sort of stuff in particular. tracking him down. So what do we got? 30 weeks of the story, so nearly 7 months story. So that's a decent length story. And I enjoy that sort of rollicking nature of it. One thing we haven't mentioned, and we really must, is the colouring. The original, obviously, and the one that Jerm's got on the screen there is in black and white. Ivan Peterson it does the colouring of these, well, a lot of the colouring for Frew of the stories, and I really enjoy the way that he does this. As we made mention that some of those odd boxes in the first row have been coloured and others haven't. That makes a significant difference when he has coloured those. That just disappears into the rest of the background, and I really like the way that Ivan has it in a sense of, well, it's a really simple palette that he uses, but it suits the Wilson McCoy in this instance artwork. So really like that, and he pays attentions to things like skin tone, the Maharajah himself, his daughter, all of the citizens of I don't think the country's ever actually named. Nimpor.
Nepal. Yep.
Yep. Are all have a darker shade skin, and he's consistent with that. So I think he puts a lot of thought and a lot of effort into the colours, and it's really worthwhile. It really stands out. And then, as I said, simple palettes, but then you get fireside scenes. And I'm looking on page 17 in particular as I just flick through. There's a fireside scene there which has an orange glow in the middle of the night scene. So the colors really help make this story pop for me in this one. And having not read this story for a while, and certainly never in color, it certainly helped my enjoyment of it. I do agree with what Jerm said there before about the panels being slightly smaller. I'm of an age where I like bigger panels, bigger dialogue if I can get it, because I still am fighting the need to get glasses. But that said, I think the story really stands up.
Own the glasses, Dan. It's all good.
Yeah.
Jerm, what about you? You enjoy the story? Have you ever hit anyone over the head with a corset before?
Can't say I have. That will be a new one for me. Look, the good thing about this issue is that you can have a look at the Wilson McCoy story, then you can have a look at a Seuj Barry story. In my opinion, his colours work better on a Wilson McCoy story. His colours are probably more traditional, match that. But no, I enjoyed it. There was a couple of panels that I thought he kind of missed the mark on, but majority of them were adequate enough that it enhanced the story. And like what you explained, Dan, with some of the subtleties with skin tones and all that, it probably actually, in a sense, maybe made the story a little bit more palatable as well, in the sense that that they weren't actually white people. The princess and the Maharajah weren't white people. They were actually of that region as well. It does say that they were from India, that the Nimpor is in India. Kind of lends to that old argument again that the Phantom was originally from India as well, because as you can see here, they can be talking via jungle drums, which I'm not quite sure how good the jungle drums would have worked over the Indian Ocean if the Phantom was in Africa at the time. So
this was obviously before Lee Falk could come up with the concept of the Misty Mountains, because otherwise I think it would have been set there.
Yeah.
It was very much a Misty Mountains type episode, wasn't it? Adventure. The Maharajah's daughter is a significant story in Phantom lore. Anyone who's been reading the story, you would have noticed that for the majority of the story, the Phantom is running everywhere. He's running from the deep woods. He's running to India. He's running to Nepal. He's running to the city. He's running everywhere until he gets to the end and he needs to break out of the Maharajah's palace, because the Maharajah says, "Look, I'm going to pay the ransom because now the kidnappers have his daughter rather than him. So no, just hold tight here. There's 5,000 guards out there. You'll never get through." But it was all a ruse, just to make sure that the Phantom was the greatest hero there ever was. If the Phantom can break out of a place that's guarded by 5,000 people, he's the man to go and rescue his daughter. And the only way he can do that is by relieving the Maharajah of his very famous horse, Royal Hero, who he then consequently gifts to the Phantom at the end of the story. And thus we have Hero, the Phantom's connection with Hero, he's the great white stallion. So this leads very well into the second story of issue 1972, Royal Hero, as mentioned before, written by Pidde, Andersson, and with art by Shane Foley. The Maharajah has gifted Hero to the Phantom, and the Phantom really enjoys this horse, and he's off on his on a bit of a ride. But then someone finds out that where the Phantom is, and can track him, and goes and blows the old the old poison dart into the Phantom, and nicks off with Hero, leaving the Phantom for dead. But luckily, an old fellow was just happened to be by, I think his name was Baku, if I remember correctly, who nurses the Phantom back to health. And then the trailer's on to try and find the missing stallion. Everyone thinks it's somebody in particular, but then who is under those bandages? Who is the masked man under those bandages? And there's a big little plot twist there, which I won't spoil. Let people think what they think.
I enjoyed the plot twist.
So did I. And then Pidde had shared with us his inspiration for that plot twist, and I thought, oh yeah, good nuts. There's a nice little comic book history there, in the old Marvel verse, which inspired him to make the plot twist that he did. I think this is I think this is a good Pidde story. It's got his touches of humor that he likes to sprinkle throughout the story, and which adds to the fun. What do you reckon, Jerm?
You make mention of the humor. I think in this case it worked okay because it was a Wilson McCoy story, so it wasn't a heavy type of story. So I think the humor worked okay. I think sometimes Pidde can try and inject too much in the wrong place, but I think doing a Wilson McCoy story, I think it works better than, say, something like, some of the other ones like the Vultures or Requiem or something like that. I don't think the humor has a place in those stories. I enjoyed the artwork. I think Ivan's colours is good. I think his colours was better in the Wilson McCoy story than in this issue, than in this story.
I was wondering if Ivan had coloured the whole thing.
That's just we didn't colour the, what do you call it?
The Paulos.
The Paulos story. Yes.
Yeah.
But I also liked how the kind of like there's a little bit of a moment where they explain why the name gets shortened from Royal Hero to Hero.
Yeah, I
enjoyed the plot twist. So I enjoyed the fact that Pidde solved that little problem, so to speak. But yeah, it was a fun story, which I think is kind of key for a sequel. It reunites some nostalgic memories, and that's what you kind of want.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Dan?
Yeah, I'm along the same vein. I think the having the same colorist helped tie them together. It probably wasn't. We've seen Shane Foley draw in a Wilson McCoy style before, and this isn't one for the most part. Like, I think he nails Aunt Lily and a few other things, but it's not necessarily a Wilson McCoy. So the colors helped the story sequel work more than the artwork did, I think. Other than as I say, Aunt Lily was really the one for me. And I think my understanding is that this was Pidde's first story that he wrote. Would that be right?
Right.
He actually submitted it 3 or 4 years ago, I think, and it took a little while for it to get through the system. I think I'm right in saying that.
I know it was a story that he wrote a few years ago. I'm not sure if it was his first one. I might have missed that, but you're right in saying that it was created quite a while ago.
Yeah, so
I'm sure Pidde, when he's watching the podcast with his glass of Australian vino, he'll let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the plot twist, I don't know.
I prefer this plot twist than what we were led up to believe it was going to be.
No, see, I didn't. I probably didn't. I probably liked the direction it was going. Without giving the plot away, I can completely understand why he did it, because it's far more realistic as to what would really happen. Do I want my comic books to be super realistic all the time. With the fandom, yes, a lot of the time. So it's, you know, probably one of those ones where you're going to make some people happy and other people not so happy. So people can take it as they like it. There was a few things that I really enjoyed. The donkey was one. You know, you talked about Steve. You talked about the Phantom running all the time in the Maharajah's daughter. The fact that he had his horse stolen, so he had to turn up on a donkey, and then the outcome with the donkey was pretty amusing. Yeah, and of course we probably need to mention, of course, I've talked about Shane Foley's art. Probably need to mention the appearance of a prominent Phantom fan, someone who, you know, we were lucky to sit with and have dinner with at last weekend in Sydney Supernova. So Chris, tip of the hat to you for making it into a Phantom comic as a bad guy, as a villain, but didn't get skull marked. So well done.
I was a little bit disappointed he didn't get skull marked, to be honest.
Well, that would have explained why he's grown the goatee.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the story. I did like the plot twist because I was thinking, how the hell could that fella have survived? I'm glad it wasn't him.
Yeah.
And something that I really, really liked, page 59, the Phantom gets clonked or wonked on the back of the head. And instead of going down like a bag of wet spuds, he just goes, that hurt, and turns on the fella. So the thing that I hate the most, when people just knock him on the back of the head to knock him out, just made him angry. And I thought, yes, I really like this. I don't care what happens in the rest of the story. I did enjoy the story, and I'm glad that happened. So thank you, Pidde, for not knocking the Phantom out quite so easily. Also, in regards to the artwork, I like the way that how broad the Phantom, like he's tall, he's not overly, you know, not like the old condom full of walnuts, but he's tall, he's broad, and he's strong. And I really like the way that he definitely had a physical presence in the story.
Just lastly, one thing before we move on with the artwork, I wonder if Shane Foley had the directive that it had to look like Wilson McCoy, or whether it was just a sequel and it wasn't a directive to make the artwork look like Wilson McCoy. Because I think you're right, Dan, that the artwork's more Shane Foley's style than a Wilson McCoy style. So I think that might be the reason why it wasn't Wilson McCoy-ish.
One thing I've only just picked up as I'm flicking through now on page 51, the little panel across the middle there has the Phantom travelling to Nimpor in the Misty Mountains. So Pidde has decided, yep, Nimpor belongs in the Misty Mountains as well.
Yeah. Well, by now the Phantom is well and truly living in Africa rather than somewhere in India, and it only makes sense to retcon that. Moving on to the third story in this multiple big issue, we have The Fence by Lee Falk and Seuj Barry. Now, unfortunately, we're recording just a little bit later than what we originally planned because as I was reading The Fence, I may have dozed off. I did enjoy the story, but after a while, it just seemed to drag on a little bit. Maybe it was the time of night I'm reading it. I don't know. But what about you guys? Do you think it's a classic story that deserved to be in the 2000th issue, or is it just a story that just happens to be there?
Look, I think it's a story that just happened to be there. I think it was a little bit more punchier than the first story.
It's only a 12-week story, not a 30-week story. So it's less than half the length.
I did like the bad guy. I thought the bad guy's method of being a bad guy, I guess, was interesting. He's
very much like a Bond villain, isn't he?
Yeah, and I thought that was kind of nice. I thought how he just happens to set up shop in Africa. Like, seriously, if you're a bad guy, don't set up shop in Bengala. Don't set up shop anywhere near Bengala. Go to the west coast of Africa, not the east coast of Africa. Go the west coast of Africa, and you've got you straight away double your chances of surviving.
But surely, he's done his homework. He's 2 days canoe travel away from the Mora village. I don't know where the Mora. There must be the neighbours of the Mori, of the Mora village. And he's done his homework. He's got these projections of these spooky things with loud noises and all that sort of stuff. He's making sure no one comes to him. But
just
unfortunately, the
other
ghost
side
of
of
isn't
Africa.
easily spooked.
and look, you could be, and we've already established that the Phantom's in Africa, so you can also go to India as well, because the Phantom's moved home. He's moved continents, so you could go to India.
Bad guys will never learn, and we're glad that we don't, because otherwise, glad that they don't. Otherwise, where the stories happen.
Yeah. Look, I think you raise a good point. I don't think we'll dwell too much on it. I like the story, but I don't think it really belongs in the 2000th issue. The colouring was interesting. Again, as I said before, I think Ivan's colours are better from a Wilson McCoy story than in a Seuj Barry story.
For me, this is a 1971 that it was first published, and that's a real sweet spot for me in terms of my nostalgia about Phantom stories. It's still a decade before I was reading, or more than a decade before I was reading, but I guess it was one of those ones that was reprinted in the infamous Frew reprints through the 1980s and 90s. For me, that early 1970s, Seuj Barry was absolutely at his peak in terms of his drawing. I love his artwork in this period. It's a shame that the panels are a bit on the undersize. Again, I completely understand why you can, it's probably 3/4 of the pages if you shrink the panels a little bit. And it's still a 100-page book overall, so I'm certainly not complaining. Yeah, that's probably one thing I would enjoy, seeing the panels a little bit larger. But again, if I could go and buy Hermes Press books, if I wanted those large size panels as well. So you get what you pay for.
But they wouldn't be in colour. They wouldn't be in colour if you buy the Hermes.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. Yeah, but yeah, I enjoyed the story. But I think maybe we'll talk about the last story, is the Jason Paulos, and then whether it belongs in the 2000th issue or not, I think is a bigger conversation.
So the final story in the 1972 is of Man and Beast, which is part 3 of the Andrew Constant Jason Paulos collaboration of Phantom by Gaslight series, where Mr. Hyde is on the trail of the Phantom, and as we left him in part 2, the Phantom had gone to seek help from Frankenstein's monster. And well, as you can just see on the pages that Germ's showing up there, when Hyde turns up to their hideout, the Phantom and Frankenstein's monster are just sitting there having a cup of tea. They don't look very perturbed by it all. They've got a plan, of course, and Hyde walks straight into it. Battle ensues, and the good guys win. It's done quickly, it's fairly straightforward, and it wraps up the 3-part series rather nicely. Fellas, anything else you'd like about this story?
I said it last time we did this, but I think this story is the sweet spot for Andrew Constant and Jason Paulos.
How so?
Well, it's their style of drawing. It's their style of characters, of storytelling, I feel. And I just felt like I haven't enjoyed an Andrew Constant story as much as this since the Kid Phantom days. Some of his other stories I felt missed the plot. Even the first Frankenstein monster story, in my opinion, missed the plot. But this story...
You're on record on saying that one. You were quite critical of that one.
And maybe it was because you're not adding to the lore, or you're not trying to take yourself serious. It's fun. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like this story was a better fit for both of the characters, for both of the creators.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
It's an interesting mashup, seeing Frankenstein's monster and Mr. Hyde, Dr. Hyde and Mr. Jekyll, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, coming together with the Phantom. I didn't really gel with the graphic novel, The Ghost and the Monster. Like Gem, I didn't really gel with that. This was better. I actually enjoyed this a lot more, and you might be onto something there, Gem, in terms of being one of the stories from Andrew I've enjoyed the most, probably since Kid Phantom as well. So yeah, no, I would agree with that. Short, snappy. The Phantom was really the Phantom. From what I know of Frankenstein's monster and the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde character, it fits well with them as well. I did enjoy the little emotional moment that poor old Dr. Jekyll had at the end, and was resolved well, I thought.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a meta to it. Hyde goes, Frankenstein's what, like from the Mary Shelley novel,
Yes.
he makes reference to the to the story. So I thought that was a bit of fun. The battle didn't go as swimmingly or as fluently or whatever as the Phantom and Frankenstein were hoping. They they tend to have swapped roles, and as the monster goes, oh, I was the one who was supposed to be holding him, but oh well, here we go, give him the jab instead. Okay, so this was the 2000th issue, not so the number, but the 2000th issue. Has it stood up? It's a full color issue, which is great. It's 100 pages, which is good. But 972, if we're thinking of a direct comparison, would probably be the likely one to compare it with. How does it stand up compared to 972?
Okay, my opinion is we shouldn't be comparing it against issue 972. 972
Why
was
is
a
that?
thousand issues ago, 30 odd years ago, pre-internet. It was back when Blockbuster was still around. You know, Pizza Hut, you had all you can eat Pizza Hut. It was before the internet. It was a totally different era and totally different time. I think if we are to compare this issue, we should be comparing it to the 75th Frew Phantom issue, which was the one that we had last year, which was I actually got a copy of it here in my pile. Where is it?
Looks like he was prepared for the question.
Yeah,
Even though
we should be comparing it to this one here, which is all color, which has got all news stories and stuff like that. So I think that's the first thing we should be doing, is because this was only released last year, so it's a better comparable issue, in my opinion.
That does make sense. I agree with what you say. 972 not being, it launched the annuals.
Apples and
that
oranges.
was the issue 972 just completely broke the mold for Frew in many ways. Jim Shepard, they'd been just doing their 36-page reprints, and trundled through the 90s. They had the 80s and 90s. They had the yellow strip at the top and all the rest of it. And suddenly, boom, there's a 300-page or something. It felt like 300 pages. I think it probably was just about that. That launched the annuals. As I said, from that point on, every year we kind of expect that from Frew. And I agree. Whether the comparison with 75, I don't know. I'll be interested to see what you say about the issue as a whole.
But I want to tap on to what you said, Dan, and I think you said as well, Jerm. 972 broke the mold. Are we seeing a breaking of the mold here, or is it just a cool issue that just runs along? There's no mold breaking.
I think it's just a cool issue.
Right.
In saying it, I think it's better than the 1500th, so 1500th number, which was the tabloid cover. Again, if you're on YouTube, you'll see a little screenshot of it, which also had the second Phantom Encyclopedia or something like that. I think this issue is better than that, but it's not as good as the 75th anniversary special.
Now, with the 75th anniversary, that was only just last year.
Yes.
Would Frew be oversaturating the market if they have another huge issue like that just another year on? And then again, we expect that issue number 2000 is probably going, hopefully, fingers crossed, is not going to be another big one. Are we expecting too much from the fans or from the, from people who go out and buy the comic every fortnight to have to keep shelling out? Like how much was the 75th anniversary issue?
25.
$15 for that big book.
$25.
Yeah.
It's a very good point. And I think the beauty about what we've just discussed is it kind of puts some of the conversation in perspective. Now we've got screenshots of some fans' opinions of the stories and stuff, which we can go through when you're ready, Steve.
Well, for what it's worth, you both used the words. It's a cool issue. I absolutely agree. I think it's I think it really does hit the mark for me in terms of the 2000th issue. Yes, but it's not number 2000. So I think the number 2000, it's just going to look cooler on a page than 1972. We know that 1972 is a significant milestone. Lots of people won't. So I hope that they do something, bigger like that 75th anniversary for the 2000th. There's lots of things that they could plan that around. We talked about the Matt Kimes story, the recent one that was around the Singh Brotherhood, prequel to the Singh Brotherhood, and how that story could have been saved for issue 2000. I actually think that having the Maharajah's daughter and the sequel to that kind of fits that bill. Probably I would have swapped them myself, but but I think that this does it does the job of a really cool issue. Anyone who's complaining about this one, going, "Oh, it's what do you want?" Do we like Steve said, do we want to be paying $25 for a special issue 3 or 4 times a year because we expect the annual at the start of the year? Then there's going to be a cool number at some point. Then there's a birthday. At what point do you go, let's just fit it into the regular scheduling?
We get to 2000 with 1972 because of the A issues and stuff like that.
Yep.
But Frew released issue 330. Well, they didn't originally release it, but then they actually created a 330. So there's that issue, and we won't answer my question. We'll just leave it hanging. Does that issue put all of the numbering out, because now there technically is an issue 330? So is 1971 really the 2000th issue? And we'll just leave that there.
That's a big cat amongst a number of pigeons.
Goodness me. I think you make a very good point.
So that one wasn't already in the original consideration of the numbering.
No, that's right. That's part of how they arrived at 972. They added the A's and they subtracted the 330.
And I did like Dudley's message from the publisher in 1972 as well about his formation of putting together the stories. Anyway, Jam, you've got some screenshots for us, some reactions from fans.
Yeah, so look, whenever we talk about some of this stuff, if you leave some feedbacks and stuff, either on YouTube or on Facebook, social media, or email it to us or message it, we will give you a bit of a shout out. And, we want, this podcast is kind of like for everyone. So we've just got some fans here. So PE Merch, basically talking about he thought the Frew issue wasn't really could have done something more significant. And then again, they're comparing back to 972, which we've kind of addressed as well. And then you've got Seuj from India, who was maybe hoping for a Team Phantom collection. You've got some positive news from John Cookson. Really enjoyed the issue. Thought that it did some great justice for the celebration, and basically reckons that Shane Foley should have got a skull mark as well. Not really, but I'll add that in. A bit of creative license. Peter Lane was...
skull mark or a good mark?
No, skull mark. Chris deserves
skull mark for Chris is what John was saying.
Didn't like it. Oh, Chris, sorry. I missed that one.
Yeah. Peter Lane, I thought this was interesting. I was initially underwhelmed, but I won over by the artwork and stuff like that. So I thought that was a nice comment to kind of raise and to highlight that is someone who might have been a little bit underwhelmed at first, but then once he got the issue, he was a lot happier with it as well. And then this one's a little bit more in depth, so I'll just read it out. It was good to get 2 unedited Falk stories in colour. Overall, I liked the sequel Royal Hero, but didn't like some elements. Didn't like Devil helping himself to food at the royal lunch dinner table without being reprimanded by the Phantom. It was undisciplined, and his Devil is smarter than that. The Phantom usually states that Devil catches his own food, and also didn't understand the purpose of the kitten at the end of the story, made for a soppy ending. That's fair enough. And sometimes Peter Andersson takes the humour too far. Phantom has a sense of humour, but it is not a comedy, and it's not like he can't write a grittier story. Recon was one of his best. I still regard the dailies as the standard. These elements are so far removed from what it should be. I don't think Constant Story belongs in a special edition. It should have been what it was intended, i.e. a backup story in a regular edition. We should have got another newly created Frew story and not a sequel to The Fence. Not every new Frew story needs to be a prequel or a sequel. In fact, I'd like to see some new stories featuring new artists. Would like to see another story written by Franks and illustrated by Kay, or any unpublished Phantom Men stories that may appeal to Oz readers. And we still haven't seen part 2 of Mason's Fury. So there's some interesting comments there. I will make mention, I actually talked about Pidde's Andersson's humour with a Swedish reader the other day, because I actually raised this with him. I said, look, when reading the Phantom Men stories with the humour from Pidde, do you find it funny is because I know he usually writes Swedish humour slapstick stories. And he actually said that he actually really enjoys it. So I think one of the reasons why it may fall flat for a lot of Australians is there might be a different cultural comedy standing. Then we've gotten this one here from Roscoe. Thought the sequence where the bad guy was sent to get Hero was a bit odd. It was like seeing the Joker essentially send a goon to shoot Batman and steal the Batmobile. Seemed way too easy. Prefer the idea of you don't find the Phantom, he finds you. Perhaps deforestation has reduced the Bengala jungles to a square kilometre or two, making it easier to find him. Did get a little bit of a chuckle out of that. Isn't feedback or criticism, just my reaction. Overall, it was fine. Talking about issue 1972. Colours, the art look great. Would like to see Frew try a different format for the dailies. They are way too small. Though the restored McCoy panels, which also had larger images later than the blurry ones, worked very well.
I preferred the panels the way they were. I know we mentioned this before. I think not having seen the originals, I have a sense of the original, and also it reminded me of the comic Watchmen. If you ever read that one, I can't remember if they're set out 3 or 4 across, but it just reminded me of the way that they are set out on their pages.
For the record, big thumbs up for me for 1972 as a celebration of the 2000 issues. I liked it.
Very good. Okay, so 1973 is The Devil in Stockholm, as well as Bad Blood in Bengala. We have part 5 of that issue. Now, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to read this one yet, but I'm very keen to, based on the discussions that have gone through on our little private chat and what the subject matter is about. But just checking out, we didn't even touch on the cover on the last issue, but that's what I'm drawn on to straight away with this issue, particularly the back cover with this young fellow with a demon just kind of lurking over his back, and sense of foreboding there.
I must admit, it's an interesting choice for the cover. Jeremy's is usually a little bit lighter, where the story is very dark, and even the art is not dark, but it's got a heavier feel to it.
Oh.
Basically, it's a story set in Stockholm, Sweden. So straight away, it gives you a good clue why this story was voted the best story for Sweden in 2019. The Swedes are very patriotic, like Australians. So if you want your story to be voted as the best story in those countries, write the story in one of those countries and you set yourself up very, very well. It is a young man with a very talented young man, artistic man, who also likes the cricket as well, so he can't be that bad. He has a dodgy, not a publicist, like a manager, who pockets a lot of the money, and the young man is very, very mentally unwell, and it's a very dark subject in the sense that we're dealing with a young man who has some mental demons. I really enjoyed this story. I felt like it gives you a great real life elements. You've got a young family who are struggling with a passing of a mother, with the father who's also struggling, with the son who's also struggling. You've got the dodginess of the manager, the business manager, but then you've also got the Phantom, and I thought the artwork of the Phantom was very, very well. Phantom also kind of has his challenges where he bemoans not being around Diana. Dan, have you read this story?
Yes.
What did you think of it?
I really liked it. It's and stands up for a couple of readings. I think the dialogue in places was a little bit laboured. If I'm going to be critical, and maybe that's partly translation coming through, and that's the messages from the Phantom about what to do next. They're very good messages in terms of the help you should seek and that sort of stuff when you've got mental demons. That felt a little bit laboured, but overall, I thought it was well scripted. It was well. The pace of it moved really well. I probably and this might be a Swedish Australian thing. The news reports about how open they were about and not spoil too much for you, Steve, but old mate, the young artist attempts suicide and is saved by the Phantom, and then is convinced by his dodgy manager the next day to leave hospital and go to an art show. And obviously he really shouldn't be doing that. And the news report is quite open about the fact that old mate attempted to take his life last night, but now he's going to the gallery. And that just felt, again, whether maybe they're a bit more open with that sort of stuff in Sweden, or that was just the plot point that they needed to make to get the Phantom going to the art show to save the day again, I suppose. But no, in terms of the realism of it, I think the artwork by John Bilecki. I don't know that I've seen any of his work before, but I think the artwork of his in terms of the creation of the mental demons and the way that he represented those was really effective and helped solidify, helped us understand what was going on inside this young man's head. I'm trying to think how to say this without giving too much away for Steve, but how the bad guys managed to use those same demons as their disguises, I'm not sure. But I guess...
Well, they were the paintings.
Yeah, right. The manager himself was a bit of a caricature, just in terms of the pointedness of his face and the length of his nose and that sort of thing. So he probably wasn't particularly realistic in that sense. But I did enjoy the depiction of the Phantom, whether he was Mr. Walker or the Phantom in costume. Thought that was portrayed well. So overall, very good story. I can understand, particularly as you said, with it being set in Sweden, in Stockholm, I can certainly understand why it would have been quite popular as story of the year. Whether it holds up and has that same sort of success when we do our best of 2024 poll at the end of this year. Interesting to see.
Quick question. Do you like the realism and the fact that it touched upon real life issues with suicide, mental demons, passing of a mother, and how that puts financial and emotional stress on a family? Do you like the Phantom comic touching upon those type of issues? Is there a time and a place for it? Should it not be in the comic, or what are your thoughts about it?
I think people are a lot more open about those things and understanding about those things these days, like a 1,000,000% on, we talked about issue 972 and 30 years ago, pre-internet and that sort of thing. The world's a very different place in terms of discussions around mental health. I wouldn't want to see it in every single Phantom story or every second Phantom story, but I also don't want to see the Sing Pirates in every single Phantom story. I don't, the variety is the spice of life, isn't it? So I've got no problems with it. And as you said, the element of the Phantom not struggling with his own mental health, but certainly a bit of insight into, it's a bit sucky that Diana and I never seem to be in the same town at the same time type of deal was a nice little insight into his mindset as well.
It was written by Mikael Lyck. In some of his other stories, he definitely portrays a thinking Phantom, definitely a bit of humanity about his Phantom. And I think that's one of the things that I like about his storytelling, is that he portrays a lot of humanity in his stories. And I think stories like this, in my personal opinion, if there's one person who may be open to having the conversation, or it enables family to have the conversation, or someone to open up to someone else, or for someone to be honest with themselves, if there's just one person that story has that eureka moment to, it's worth writing. I just want to highlight page 18. I love this sequence here, and I'm not sure whether that was done intentionally or whether he was basically like, well, I can save myself a couple of hours here by just doing speech bubbles and doing black squares. But I thought it worked really, really well, that sequence, that page.
Sure, and that harkens to lots of Phantom Lee Falk stories. The Ambassadors is one that I'm thinking of, or the what's the one with the costume party? The lights go out, the Phantom just knocks out one bad guy at a time. The masked ball. The Phantom the lights go out, the Phantom knocks out one guy at a time, and suddenly they're all gone, sort of thing. So no, I really liked that sequence as well. Interesting, and we mentioned before about the content advisory warning that King Features are now getting Frew to put in the front of every book. This one still says this is a publication of a historical content and may have negative depictions, mistreatment, even though it's a brand new story. That might have been a spot to have a content advisory. This book, this story deals with mental health concerns, and if you need help, here's a couple of phone numbers or a website to reach out to. So
while you guys were talking, I was just looking for that, just to see if there was like a lifeline in there.
No, there's
and
not.
I saw the content advisory for the for the old stories that, well, this isn't an old
Yeah.
story. What's that
Yeah.
in there for?
All right, so we've got a couple of comments when we asked the question. We got one from the Ozman 86. I always enjoy when fictional characters deal with real issues. That's one reason why I love the Phantom and his stories. He tackles real world problems and not supervillains. From Joey Pajamas, which is Joe Douglas. Totally something the Phantom should cover. And then we've also got Bert Goldsmith. When they are well written, no, I don't mind at all. When they are clunky and ram the issues down your throat without any subtlety at all, he has an issue with. I don't even usually finish reading them. So I thought that was just a couple of good little comments that a lot of fans don't have a problem with the Phantom dealing with real world issues like this. And let's face it, there is a history of it. You've got Phantom dealing with dictators, saving forests, and all that type of stuff in past Frew issues and Lee Falk stories. So, you know, if Lee Falk was still writing now, I'm sure he'll be touching upon depression as well.
Okay, so what's happening in Bad Blood in Bangala, Part 5?
Well, it wraps up the story.
The conclusion. Okay.
Well, maybe.
It's a conclusion, but it's a Shane Foley story, so there's a loose thread ready for him to pick up from another story.
Exactly. So look,
the very last box is continued in the Golden Route, so we already know the name of the next part of the next chapter.
So we find out who the mysterious lady is and where she ties it in. Now, we were correct. We did say it was Professor Dudley from the daily story called The Professor. And no, it wasn't an attempt for Shane to get more stories from Frew by putting Dudley, the editor and publisher, into a story. So it wraps up the story. I thought it wraps up the story quite nicely. It's quite punchy. And then, of course, there is definitely some loose threads left over for the Phantom to deal with next.
Is it as text heavy as a lot of Shane Foley stories can be, or is there a nice balance there, Dan?
No, it is still text heavy and certainly in parts but I like the action in this one. I say this every time. I would just really like to see it all collected as a single issue. That said, Shane does do a really good job in the first page and a half, not necessarily in the first panel, pretty quickly going, oh, and remember, these are the key story elements you need to remember from last time to pick up on where you were. I think it moves the story along well. It does tie up some loose ends, but as I said, the story is still to be continued. They're still on their journey. They've just got a captive now.
So just a couple of quick little points. I loved how you've got the warrior kind of guiding and being secretive and, you know, like doing few little hand signals and pointing, and that makes sense. It's a good way of having support characters and then not just being a token little character, and it's, you know, the Phantom and the Jungle Folk fighting together, working together, you know, to solve the problem. So I thought that was quite good. The other thing is these trees here. Now, they kind of look like a boab tree, but I remember talking to Shane about them, and he actually researched a lot of the foliage about what it would look like in the Phantom's home if Bengala was actually a real country. So a lot of the foliage and stuff that you see in Shane Foley's stories are actually realistic from that area of Africa. So I thought it's just worth making mention of that as well.
When you had that page up, it reminded me of, it must be years ago, something similar was up, and we actually delved deep into to find out what those trees were and all that sort of thing. So kudos for the attention to detail.
And I must say, I love seeing Professor Dudley back. I really liked her in the original story, so I'm glad to see her back.
I mentioned the last panel in the last narrator's box. In terms of the loose ends, the Phantom literally says, there's lots of loose ends to clear up. So he wants to see her and her husband get reunited. Okay, yes, that's good. What about you? I've got lots of loose ends to clear up, says the Phantom. Power and the Neri need to be returned to Tessa, then to the Golden People. Then I've got to check on Laodia. And finally, after all of that, we've got to track down the Leopard Man. So,
so he hasn't tracked him down yet.
No,
right.
There's still lots going on. And this is the end of part 5. I said we're moving on to part 6. I reckon there could be part 15 before this is all over and done with.
Well, I like it. And I reckon we might not see all of the parts wrapped up, but I kind of like the fact that we've kind of ended it there, or Have we ended it? Are we not ending? I would love to see one day a Shane Foley special with all of his stories put together.
You have to wait another 20 years, I think, for the Shane Foley special.
Yeah.
When you sat down to read that, you'd have to be committed to doing some thinking and some concentrating and some remembering of past stories, because by goodness, I'm not sure if there is a creator out there who connects so many other elements of past stories into what he does. Lots of writers put lots of work into making sure the fandom is authentic and has all the fandom tropes and all the rest of it. But in terms of tying in past characters and someone who's appeared in 4 panels back in 1952 and putting those all into his stories, he's right up there. You'd need to be sitting down. I'll need my glasses before I can read that book.
I'm just picturing, like in the cop movies or on TV shows where they've got all these different things,
red lines,
threads, and there's red lines, threads going everywhere on the wall. So I'm just picturing that in Shane Foley's
One last thing on 1973, yep. Sorry, it's the forum letters, and we've got a couple of pages of fandom forum letters at the back, which is really cool to see. As always, Dudley is fantastic at publishing basically everything that comes in and accepting criticism or responding to criticism. I was particularly entertained by Adriano's letter. I know Dudley was as well. Every now often he gets a letter that's so ludicrous that it's just leaves me speechless, and I've got to print it with no comment. So you'll be entertained when you read Adriano's letter, Steve, when you get the chance for that. But I guess the overall tone of certainly the responses from Dudley was that not enough people write to him. And the reason we're not getting the forum more often is that there's not enough correspondence come in. He must feel a little bit like he's just sending stuff into the void and never hears a lot of feedback. I know he doesn't go on social media and look for that sort of feedback. And look, let's be honest, I know you do it, Jerm, but for the most part, don't read the comments. I would love if you're still listening to this podcast at the hour and a half mark once we've finished our 3 comics, and you've got the time, you've got that sort of time in your life. Please spend some of it writing Dudley an email and focus on some positives, because I think the man needs to hear more about the good work that he's putting out there. He does some fantastic stuff, and we can nitpick about, the panel was a little bit too small, or, this, that, or the other. But that's us looking to be critical. I guess it's human nature, but I think that Dudley does need to hear some more positive comments, and he needs to hear a lot more about what people are thinking of what they see.
Giant size 29. Now this involves 4 stories plus a little extra there for Walmir. So first story is The Childhood of the Phantom by Lee Falk and Mozart Couto. That's a different artist that I don't know has worked with Lee Falk before. More on that in a moment. The Grateful Lion by unknown creator and Abir Teixeira. Peter Chapman by Walmir Amaral. And The Red Death in White Belt by unknown creator and Walmir Amaral. Very quickly, who's this Mozart Couto?
Is Brazilian. He's created mainly some covers for some Brazilian publishers. It's the first time he's created a Phantom story. We do have an interview with him on our website, which will be in the show notes. And then, as you can tell, he has redrawn the classic Childhood of the Phantom story.
Do you know when he redrew it?
It's been done in the last 2-3 years.
Okay.
And is this its first publication?
This is the first time it's been published. So it was been published for Frew. And I love the little gun scene at the start, which kind of then has the Phantom reminiscing about his childhood. I will admit, I really enjoyed the artwork. And I've recently read The Childhood of the Phantom story, but I actually caught myself and found myself reading this in detail and then going back and comparing the panels. And I think Mozart and the editors, I believe Glenn Ford was involved a little bit with some of this as well. I think they've done a great job in re-imaging a classic.
I wasn't a fan of the gun scene in the first couple of pages, mostly because it was because of the third panel where one of the bad guys gets shot in the chest. And, it turns out, yes, that he was just wounded. And it does turn out that the Phantom shoots guns out of hands a bit more after that. But that's a Phantom I don't enjoy seeing charging into battle, guns blazing, shooting and killing or hurting people, that sort of thing. But it improved after that. Yeah, I'm similar. I enjoyed seeing the reimagining of the panels, bits that you go, oh, I remember that exact panel. I haven't gone back and reread the Childhood of the Phantom, but I remember, you know, how Wilson McCoy drew that compared to how this has been drawn on this occasion. I also remember how Paul Mason drew that, repurposed some of that for Kid Phantom as well. So it's really interesting seeing such a familiar story being done in a new way, in a new style, not word for word by any stretch of the imagination. The other two Lee Falk, Childhood of the Phantom or anything else that we've seen.
I think it's pretty close to word. It's like probably, I reckon it will be at least 80% of word to word. And like a lot of the scenes are very similar, like just from a different angle and stuff like that as well. So I would recommend, if you are a nuffy like us, go back and get this issue and then get the Childhood of the Phantom original one out and have a look at it panel to panel, word to word. And I reckon it might surprise you.
There are a couple of extra stories. There's a Sir Falcon Desert Adventure, the Phantom Ranger, the Envious Warrior. And then we get to page 93 of Giant Size. It's The Grateful Lion, another Phantom story for unknown creator and Abir TX era. Is this another new one, Germ?
This one was published before by Brazil. I must admit, I gave up reading this story.
What about you, Dan?
I read the whole thing, mostly because I was just fascinated to see which artist I was looking at in the next panel. Because when I first opened it, I thought, geez, this guy has really honed in on Bill Leganti and decided that he's going to have that artistic style. And then you turn over the page and, oh, that's a Wilson McCoy. I recognise this from Ray Moore. So he sort of is very hit and miss in terms of and then there's some that are rubbish and probably should never be published. So some panels as well. So it's I can understand why you put it down, Germ, because it is a very meandering, haphazard, typical of the Phantom's World / Giant Size / reprints of Italian, I'm guessing.
Italian writer, but a Brazilian artist.
At different times, you're like, oh, the page has been printed in the wrong order, have they? Because the story jumps back and forth and then it goes left and right and that sort of thing. So I can completely understand why you might not persist and get through it. I talked about Maharajah's Daughter being a wandering, meandering story that Lee Falk didn't know the end of when he started it, but at least it follows a straight line. You know, even if that it doesn't follow a straight line, but it moves in a linear fashion, whereas this just jumps back and forth. So much of it is not connected, and then it goes back, and the bad guys, yeah. So I get it. It was worth the exercise. I don't know that I'll ever read it again. That's probably enough said about it.
You guys have been selling it. The way you guys are selling it, I don't know if I'll actually read it. So we'll move on. So that was the Grateful Lion. Then we have another Shadow story. Then we have Peter Chapman. Now I thought that was an interesting name for a story. So actually, while you were discussing Devil in Stockholm, so that I wouldn't get too sucked in by spoilers, I was having a little quick read of that. And that was a fun little thing. I like that.
I must admit, I thought Dudley made a mistake when they wrote it, because I thought, no, Peter Chapman's the artist, not the story title. Same thing. Read it and I thought, oh, I enjoy this. Now, it's worth making mention that the artist, Wilmer, he's kind of like the grandfather of artists in Brazil. It's worth doing a bit of a research on him. We've got articles and stuff on Chronicle Chamber. This is very likely his last ever story that he created, and it's published for the first time here. And it's obviously created as a tribute to Peter Chapman. So I know the Chapman family absolutely love this little tribute, and I know, speaking to a lot of Brazilian fans and stuff like that as well, they're quite excited the fact that there's a Wilmer story that they have not read or seen, and that it's been published in a Frew comic. So I said this to Glenn when I caught up with him last weekend. I think it was a great addition to the Giant Size.
When I picked up the Giant Size and, browsed through the contents on the front page to see which ones are the Phantom stories this time, again, I'm like you, Steve, the name jumped out at me, Peter Chapman. Hang on. So it was the first story I flicked to straight away. And yeah, I'm with you. The artwork is not necessarily my cup of tea, but I did really enjoy the little. It's a little 4-page homage to a great Australian artist who is probably underrated and under recognised. I'm pleased to hear that the Chapman family enjoyed it. I'd be interested to hear. I didn't get the chance to catch up with Jeremy McPherson last weekend and hear what he had to say about it, because I know he's a big fan of Peter's work as well. It's probably my pick of the bunch out of the giant size, and probably my favourite giant size story for a while, actually.
So what about the next story there, Dan? Red Death in White Belt. But one unknown creator, but Walmir Amaral has done the art in this again. I must admit, when I was just flicked open the book and I saw just a random page, and I thought that was Ming the Merciless on the second last page, I think. But Dan, have you read this one? And
quicker than it deserves, and I want to go back and read it properly, because I'm still not 100% sure whether the bad guys were aliens or just super modern villains. It's very James Bondish in terms of lairs on islands and plans to destroy the world and all of this sort of stuff. But no, I enjoyed the quick read that I gave it, and I'm looking forward to going back and reading it properly, because I think it it hits enough Phantom elements. There's an amusing panel there somewhere where he said, hang on, wait, was the guy who's punching all of our henchmen, is he dressed in red? I'm like, no, I know he should be dressed in purple, but I get you, he's a Brazilian fan, so that's okay. It's funny because this is the same artist, that Walmir Amari from the Peter Chapman. I just said that his art in that one wasn't quite my scene. Very happy with the art in this one. Probably a younger man, but you can tell the Cy Barry influences there for sure. So no, I quite enjoyed that. Keen to go back and find out if you're watching the YouTube, you can see what looks like a UFO that the Phantom's about to fly. And there's just some technology things that at different times I'm like, is that Ming the Merciless? Are we looking at aliens here? What's going on? So
anything to add there, Drew?
Won't comment on the story, but what's worth making mention, as you can see, if you've got the comic in front of you, you see this little yellow little stripe, little line. The size of the comic is actually that size. So they're little digest books. I actually talked to Dudley. I said, so Dudley, did you think about publishing it 1 page per page? So 1 page of the Phantasma book to the Frew book. And he said that they did actually look at doing that, but the artwork got a little bit lost being 1 per page, where the art actually looked better being 2 per page. And he said, look, it's not the end of the world for comic readers having to turn a comic. So I think he's made the right decision.
I agree. I didn't have any problem with turning landscape to read through this one. It's actually easier to read. The panels are a better size than the dailies we were talking about earlier.
And on the very last page, there's a little bit there about Walmir's legacy. And I think there was a little message or communication between himself and Glenn Ford about the work that Glenn's doing with the giant size. Okay, now that has been a bit of a hike. It's only been 3 or 4 comics, but they're quite important and quite in depth. And it's been a while since we've had a chance to talk. Yeah, it's been a while since we've spoken together. So apologies if we're going a bit long. Now we have Kale reviewing the latest Phantom comics and Christian the latest German comics. So thank you very much, fellas.
We have quite a lot of issues to cover today, starting off with issue 8 of 2024. It is a quite special issue that was created for the small convention Uppsala Comics. The cover by Henrik Sahlström features the Cathedral of Uppsala promptly, and the reprint of the Demon's Image created by Tony DePaul and Heiner Bade back in 1995 takes place there. This story has not yet been published outside of the Nordic countries, even though it won the best story in Norway that year. I think it has some similarities to the movie that came out in 1996, and the second part of Indiana Jones, in that it's a relic stolen and it needs to be returned. But it differs in what the relic does. This story is paired with the slaves. That is a Bastei story that was written in the 80s, but it was first released in Germany a few years ago. It was created by Menningen and Tafalla. It's always cool when Andreas and the editorial staff chooses something new to Fantomen, and I hope he continues to introduce us to some different content. And there's a cool thing like how this cover was made with like the sketches and stuff. Quite cool. Then we have issue 9 with a cool cover with a lot of action by Luc Arbada. It features a new Team Fantomen story, Farligt vatten, that's like dangerous water, by Bernd Frentz and Janus Ordon. And yeah, it's a cool story with a lot of underwater action, and I mean I love Ordon's art as usual. And then we have a a Sunday story, The Warmongers by Claes Remerti and Graham Nolan. And this time it's unedited, and I know Frew fans, readers are used to this, that you get all the panels, but I've talked with a few Swedish fans and not everyone likes this. Some thinks like when it's edited, it's get a better flow, and yeah, I'm quite on the fence. I like that you get all the stories when it's like this, but yeah, I think I enjoy reading it more when the repetitions are removed. There's not that much repetition in this story, but yeah, it differs. Then we have issue 1011, a double issue. It has an epic cover depicting the first Phantom on the beach and swearing the skull oath, done by Rafael Ruiz. The Man Who Could Not Die is the reprint Team Fantomen story by E.D. Carelli and Georges Bess. It's a classic 80s Team Fantomen story, a bit different in that the comic book Fantomen is mentioned, like it says. It's 20 years old and stuff. And this is the second reprint of this story, and it fixes some continuity errors, mainly on this page with who was the Phantom's wife at the moment. The first reprint fixed the art but had the wrong name written. So this is basically the ultimate version of this story. And yeah, it's about the myth of the Phantom cannot die, basically. Then we have cool, like this is also like to celebrate the Norwegian Constitution Day. So it's the part from Phantom Strikes, and I got some nice signs here from Stockholm International Comics Festival, where I was able to listen to the authors, and so Arild Westernes and Knut Robert Knudsen, and the art is done by Mike Collins, and yeah, it takes place in Norway, in Bergen even, and yeah, that's cool. Then we get a short Carl Schempe, and I always enjoy reading Carl Schempe. Here we also get an article about the character that's within that Phantom meets, because it's its own character, so quite cool. And then we also get this daily story about the prediction of the Phantom's end. It's been going on for quite some time, and yeah, I hope the end justifies its long length of multiple parts. And here we also get to know which one won the best story of 2023, and it's Ku Klux Klan. It's a reprint of a Team Fantomen story. And then next issue, issue 12. This has a cover by a new artist, or new to Fantomen, not new in that way, Kasia Nie. I think it has a really clean, nice, cool look, and She has former experience working for Marvel, Image, Dark Horse, and she really knows her stuff. And at least for me, she's more than welcome to come back and do more Phantom stuff. And the story is also art by her, and it's written by Jakob from the editorial team. And yeah, it's like the mongrels would be the translation of the story name. And yeah, I mean, it's a bit of like Oliver and the Gang from Disney, but yeah, totally different, but it has some similarities. Then we have the new Thorgal story, and here encounters Bluetooth, not the computer thing, but the king that Bluetooth is named after. Yeah, and that story concludes in this issue number 13 and from 2024. And this, talking about new creators, this is the second cover by Henry Johannes, and quite cool. The first one was in issue 2-3 of this year, I think. And then we have a new writer and new artist on the new Team Fantomen story. It's Mikael Bergqvist and Gerardo Canelo. It's called like the Mark of the Phantom. And yeah, it features evil artifacts, cults, and unexplained things, like how the mark gets to where it is. You have to read it to find out. And yeah, the conclusion of Thorgal, as we said. So let's see you next time. Then we will talk about Flash Gordon coming back, reprint of The Secret of the Colossus, I think it's called in English, and a new story, Light over Bakama Lake. See you then. Happy Phantoming.
Chamber, my name is Chris. Today I review the Phantom number 7 from Big Comics for €12.50. It's called Der Gefangene, The Prisoner, from Peter Menigan, and art by Jose Ortiz Tafalla. We start with some words from Ulrich Wick, and in this magazine it comes with the extra page 7 from Phantom number 5, but which by error has page 7 from Phantom number 4. So I hope in the next time we get the right page. And we start with The Prisoner. The artwork and printing is like always very awesome. I like the color in the drawing by Mr. Tafalla very much. It's my childhood, and like I said, it's awesome. The paper is awesome, and we have finished the story right now. Then again, 700 pieces were made in this time. All stories are from 1983. This is the wrong page from this magazine, like I said before, and we start with Der Zyklop. In English it calls Black Day for Diamond Sharks. And I like this story much. It comes from old Bastei magazines I can show you in the list of Phantom that Wick Comics published. Here you see it. It's Phantom number 23, 223 and 235. And this comics should be released soon. And we finished the Wick comic. Today I review the Zauberstern comic number 13, which has 3 comics inside: The Haunted Castle, Hate, and Waste. And it costs under €10, 100 pages. We have 2 years of Zauberstern Phantom comics. let's start. In this magazine, like I said, it's a haunted castle where from Frew story, and it's a remake of the 1948 Ray Moore and Lee Falk story in color this time. And we have the haunted castle in Phantom from Bastei, number 94. Die Welt des wilden Mogo. Just a quick preview. And a very old magazine from 1953 from Aller Verlag. The second magazine from 1943. And the official Ray Moore and Lee Falk story were released in Australia, Brazil, Canada, Finland, France, India, Ireland, Italy, Mexico, New Zealand, Norway, Puerto Rico, Spain, Sweden, United States, and Germany. And the Frew story, which shows this magazine, it is only released in Australia and Germany by now. So it's cool that we have this story. I like this story from all three the most. It's a cool story, I think. The paper, the printing quality, the colors are awesome. And it's called Das Spukschloss in German. And we got to an end now. Soon. It's a long story, and now it's Hate Part 2 from Mark Verheiden and Luke MacDonald, which is the second part of the story. And it's a DC comic. It's a darker story, I say, but also cool. Zauberstern did a great job with this magazine. They released other magazines too. And we have Müll in German. It's called Waste. Mark Verheiden and Luke MacDonald. And it's also a DC comic, which is released in Brazil, Germany, Norway, and United States. Like the Hate, also in Brazil, Germany, Norway, and United States is released. And the next magazine comes out in August 13, and we have a little information about Roy Fellman and Ivan Pedersen. And the cover is made by Timo Würz. And I hope to read the next Zauberstern comic soon.
Hello and welcome to another one of Chronicle Chamber's comic book reviews from India. I am Abir, and today we are reviewing Regal Publishers' The Phantom Comics number 36. This year, number 36 came out back in March 38, I believe, after a 2-month or 3-month break from their 35th issue, which came out during December-January period. So yes, this issue features one story, a Sunday story called How the Phantom Saved the Earth, and a cover by Ovila Cheko. It's a pretty nice looking cover, taken from the story itself, and it is yes, but it is a kind of ordinary looking, but it is what it is. So yeah, I'm quite fond of Ovila Cheko as an artist, but this is probably not it is fine, but yeah, that is what it is. As a freebie, we have this card based off the cover, and yeah, so yeah, that is the cover and this the freebie. So yeah, let's get inside the book and look at what's in store. In the first page, we have this the information of the story, which is How the Phantom Saved the Earth, story by Falk, art by Seuj, and this is a new colorist from them, which is Sri Lakshmi KS. So there we have those things, and we see the same content advisory from Kingfisher Syndicate, which is standard to be maintained in every single publication of these old strips by KFS now, apparently. So that is what it is, and we get to the story, which is How the Phantom Saved the Earth. So the story is a Sunday. It is during the later years of Seuj, and it was in the 90s, I believe. So during very much the end of Seuj's run on the Phantom. So that's but the art is still nice and it looks really good. And of course Regal has used the same thickness of paper, and yes, it's a nice looking book. So yeah, this coloring by Sri Lakshmi KS, it looks fine. It does not it doesn't hurt your eyes or something. It looks really good. The backgrounds, the characters, maybe the old man Moses clothes kind of looks, maybe it would have been better if it was like kind of I would say not, let's say brownish something. It is more of a gray now. So yeah, then we have the story is basically Moss telling a story about a supernatural forces faced by the Phantom, who tests him in the story, which are first the aliens, and then the Phantom defeats the aliens, and then the aliens run away. Then there are gods of fire, water, air, and earth. So they test the Phantom as well. So yeah, and that process basically kind of saves the earth. So that is what it is. Then then the color, I remembered that I also had seen this story before in a Bengali magazine. This is where I first read the story, and that is called Ananda Mela. So I thought I would use a panel from there as well. So let's do a kind of comparison. The colors are obviously these are kind of modern sort of colors, but these were like done by hand, and of course some things look different, and probably this panel here kind of looks better than this, I'd say, because it's kind of course there are different mediums and done different times, but some things are kind of nice. So that is interesting. So then we also have the story the gods testing the Phantom. So the god of fire who tests the Phantom, and then we have this page which was also here. So a comparison of this would also be interesting. I would say these two kind of look kind of similar, but as I've read this before in this, it kind of looks like a little better to me. The greens are kind of maybe, so I think these were colored by Anandavela themselves, the magazine, and it's a very different comparison of colors there. So this was one of their issues. So it's kind of nice comparison of colors we have had now. So yes, the story is printed quite nicely. The colors do pop, and it is, as I had read this, it was probably some of the first Phantom stories I've ever read, so it kind of has appeal to me, of course. And fantastical elements are kind of not liked by fans, but the element of phantasm in this story are of course told through Moz, so it is not actually fantastic, because at the end some nice artwork there by Seuj, of course, is the best. And the Phantom eventually declines them, because it is just a story, it's not real. So the readers are kind of fascinated by the fact that if whether they are real or not, Falk just leaves them as mystery. So that is how the stories are done. We see this ad for the Shatu Saga collection, and they still have this one for sale, and there hasn't been more. That is maybe a bit of a complaint. The final page also has an ad for Federal Bank. So Regal is getting sponsors now, and that is also great, and because it is a good way to increase your revenue, I suppose. So that's a good thing, I guess. So this story and these comics with one story, I suppose, is a good publication, and of course with Regal's great format, it just is another nice issue. But as readers have pointed out, that a story after a big collection like the Christmas special, they did only one story in a book, and then before that a couple of three stories in a book. The amount of stories provided in this sort of interval of like 3-4 months, you get another issue with one story, and then after that you get after 3-4 months you get another issue with one story, or maybe 2 stories. That is kind of not very much preferred by fans, and they would like to see more stories in a long interval than one story in a long interval. So that is an issue that Regal needs to keep in mind, and Other than that, yes, the colors are pretty fine, but of course everyone has their preferences. And as I have also compared, I kind of was more into the old colors that I saw in that magazine. So that is a different topic altogether, but yes, another great issue from Regal, a issue that will be liked by fans and are liked by fans, but they need to keep in mind their the quantity of stories that they are providing to the fans after a long interval, and that is what has been suggested by many fans, and that is all there is to say about this issue. Thank you for watching, and happy phantoming. Hello and welcome to another one of Chronicle Chamber's comic book reviews from India. I am Abir, and today we are reviewing V Comics featuring the Phantom. What I have is V Comics number 13 and 17. So a little background of V Comics, and these people are from the same publishing group as the Lion Mutu Comics, and they had released two excellent hardcover collections of the Phantom back in 2022 and 23, and I have reviewed both of them, so you can check them out on Chronicle Chamber. So these are their newest publications, and they have abandoned the hardcover series and started with this kind of monthly format of comics, and these two are what have come out from that V Comics series. So this is number 13 and this is number 17, and we have a lot to talk about them. So without further ado, let's get started with the review. Looking at V Comics number 13, published in January of this year, we have a cover by Ertuğrul Edrina, who is a Turkish artist whose covers were also used for the hardcover books that are already reviewed on Chronicle Chamber, and also the Week comic series that has been ongoing, and the covers are also reprinted there as well. And so this issue features one story, but it is, as you can see, pretty thickness of this is pretty bigger. So the reason behind that is, of course, the fact that we have a Regal to compare its size with, and as you can see, it is quite smaller in size. So if we compare them one on top of the other, you can see that it's pretty smaller. As a result, a one story in this book makes it quite thick. So that is an interesting format to be choosing, and it is priced 100 rupees, and that is pretty cheap as well compared to Regal's, I would say 200, and then their big issues are like published around like 500, 400, something like that. So it is a very interesting price, and then the also cover and stuff, and then the cover is illuminated, so that is kind of shines there. You can see there's also the ads and stuff, but this is not like glossy or anything. The pages are, however, glossy. As you can see, this is very glossy pages, and it is the thickness of the paper is the same as what Regal uses. So at the same price, you have kind of same quality at the lesser price, I would say, because 100 and it is 200. So yeah. So inside we have the story of the Ghost Wall by Tony D. Paul, and art by George Olson and Keith Williams. Okay, so there is an editorial page about the Phantom. It says, "Welcomes readers to the Phantom's world," something like that, and then the story. So the story is a daily story from like 2000s, and it is illustrated by Olsen and Williams, as I said before. So the format the story is printed in is very interesting. Is the fact that you can see it's been edited to look like a comic book. Give it a comic book feel, like the panels are displaced, and so the story was previously published, as I said, in Euro Books. This is one of their issues. So for a comparison's sake, let's have a comparison of these two stories. The Euro Books version, as you can see here, it has the traditional the panel structures. So, and if I compare them here, the panel structure is very different, and it seems also, because Eurobooks featured the original colorings of the story, they have recolored this story as well. So that is another interesting thing. I mean, kind of different use of colors and all together. And yeah, so the orders of the panels are changed. However, they did not like kind of decrease or increase them with extra art or something like that. So it remains kind of, I would say, the same. But then the Eurobooks versions are printed on like normal paper, but this is glossy, so the colors do pop. I mean, it's fine, like it looks quite nice, and yeah, it just goes on. This is a typical story. This a story from the era, like the Phantom is visiting this wall, the monument wall, and then the ghost appears, something. So yeah, nicely printed actually. It looks pretty good, as you can see. And yeah, the thickness, like the increases are increased and stuff, but it looks quite nice. I don't know about the translations because I actually can't read it, but it is. The story is printed nicely, and the colors maybe they have touched the colors, but it is fine. It looks quite good. The art is controversial, and it's not like the best art you see on the Phantom, but yeah. So in the end, we have some other comics as well, the Hagar, the Horrible, and then we have some ads for next issues, and an ad for the next issue, which I am about to review, of teasing the wedding of the Phantom and Diana, and then some Tintin ads and stuff. In the end, we have the back cover with art by Jeremy McPherson. This is from the first Frew trade paperback, and then some interesting thing here that it mentions KFC Features Syndicate copyright. So that is a very, very interesting thing, and that has been a topic of discussion in the Phantom groups. So, and then it also is there because it says KFS Features Syndicate, not like Kingfisher Syndicate or KFS only. So that is kind of their mistake on. That is a very interesting topic, and it is continued in their next issue. So let's just go ahead to the next issue. Looking at number 17 of B Comics, we have the wedding of the Phantom on the cover. So as you can see, this is the cover of the book, and it has the same image of the limited edition print that was released during that time. And the same image was used later also in some covers and stuff, so this is one of them now. And yeah, it's been obviously recolored, and the coloring is quite fine actually. It does not look that bad. And yeah, so that's the inside. The editorial is gone now, and we have images of the Phantom and Diana taken from the story. Of course, they are like flipped and maybe some bit are redrawn. So that is something. So this story that this issue has is the wedding of the Phantom, the Sunday story, not the daily version. And so it is quite short, and in order to publish them in their like small format, B Comics has done something that is I would say along with some other things is very controversial and not very much pleasant for the fans. And we have seen outrage among the fans for this, and which is obvious. So in this issue, through 1000th issue, we had the same story, the Sunday version, being printed. So we will just compare a bit, so that will make it kind of easier for us to understand how the story is being printed in this issue. So I am just first looking at this. So as you can see here, they have 2 panels per page. So big panels 1, then 2, 3 and 4. So and compared to the original Sunday, of course this is not the original format of the Sunday, but it's kind of another format of Sunday that KFS had, of like looking it looked like tabloid format. So yeah, so these 2 panels, as you can see here, are being put on there. So what had happened here, as we can probably notice if you look closely, these 2 panels, they have extended these 2 panels, and the rest, these 2 also you can see they have extended the panels. They have drawn more, added more extra art on top or bottom or in the background or something to make it look like, and then with the color and everything, it kind of looks very different. Now this is like this ivory panel you have see here. You can see that, and then you can see this, like they've extended this bit, extended the top there, extended the top. Then right away you would notice that the Phantom Diana here was wearing a bikini, and now in this they have changed it and made it look like a kind of swimming dress. So that the same thing was kind of done in this issue, which is the Phantom Waits Indrazal Comics number 317 by Indrazal back in when they published it, I think around the 80s. So yeah, you can see this here, this bit, and this. There is, if we compare it side by side, as you can see, this black swimming dress, and then here they made it more longer, so that is very interesting. However, we must understand that in Rizal, when they did it, it was like a long time ago, but that was the 80s, when it was a product of its times. But now in the modern day we have this kind of censoring here, that is like, you can look at this, so everything is censored, and the extra art is extended on the bottom like this, and the top extremely edited. And then we have the next page, which also extended. These kind of panels, you can see here, they are extended. Everything. So it needless to say that they have censored, they have extended the art. The colors look terrible on this great paper, and of course everything, extension of panels and every single thing. And then we go on, everything is gone. Then we will have another thing that is gone from the story, which is, if you can see here, this panel is repeated, is here, but then this panel of the Phantom and Diana kissing is gone. They have removed every single kissing scene, as you can see. Every other panel is there. This panel right there it's not like straight, but they have made it straight. Extended panels, extra art. This is the man-rig panel. The colors made kind of very horrible. What do I have to say? So as we go on, the colors make the story look very bad. Just go and there. Got the Phantom. Here he was seen blushing, but they just removed this, and they used the same panel on the first face, just slightly redrawn face of Diana's panel. They had done that. This panel again extended, skies are added, some sort of clouds every single time, and then the whole background thing. Then they finally, when they marry, pronounce them when they marry. The Phantom and Diana kiss, but here they redrew it. You can see they edited it to look like they were about to kiss, and look how that, I don't actually like to say this, but it looks horrible. So every two kissing panels there were, both are gone. and then just flipping through. The composition of the colors, it makes the comic looks colorful, but it is not extra overuse of colors. Like the problem that I have with Shakti is just repeated here. It's just an extra art and every single thing. It just ruins the the story. Here also the censoring of Dinah's costume is there. Just going there. Yeah, then the story ends. Yeah, so ads and stuff. And they are supposed to be publishing the story of Jumba, I think. That's what it is. I believe. Also the release date. And then in the end, surprisingly, they have the Phantom and Diana kissing. But inside the book, there is no panel of them kissing. No, there is censoring of Diana's costume and every bad bit that you would probably see. So it's a very unpleasant, but however, I think for 100 rupees, it is, the colors and everything, the nicely printed pages, it's fine, but why we expected more from them? I mean, they are supposed to, if they want to do a reprint, just do a authentic reprint, because I was surprised because they are the ones who published the hardcover books, which had amazing quality reproduction of the original strips. But when they started to publish in color and in this format, everything just got ruined. The other issue was fine, but this issue in particular is just not kind of my cup of tea. However, some things I just thought I would point out is that the production is great, the quality is awesome, but the panels, the story, how it's printed, and the colors and how the format and everything is bad. But for 100 rupees, the production and everything, that's something very interesting. And I think if that is possible, the other publishers can also take notes from that, because a very nice book can be published even by the V Comics people if they do some good colors and also not do editing and present an authentic reprint of the original stories. That's what I hope from their next issue, which will feature the Tale of Jumba, and that is my hope. But before that, some stuff that was thought I have to share. Muthu Comics, the parent publisher of this company, the Prakash Publishers, who publishes the V Comics, had published this story in the 80s or around the 90s in a Muthu Comics. I think what had happened was, I'm not entirely sure, that they had taken the scans from that particular story and used it in this I would say comics, and just like how they printed it, like this in 2 panels per page, because those issues were kind of the same size, which I had also shown in the hardcover book reviews. So the insides were kind of the same. So if I'm not sure, and I don't have the issue, but I am guessing that they use the proofs of that page which was like not colored, and which everything extra art and everything was there. They just colored it and published it. So it is the old editing, and they just put color on top of it. But that brings the question, why Kingfisher Syndicate would allow them to do that. But as far as I know, these are licensed by Kingfishers, because it was out on their, like, what I would say, on their bulletin or something, that Muthu, Lion Muthu and Prakash are licensed to publish the Phantom. But that is a worrisome thing, because with license they did not use new things, but use the old things that is reminiscent, like what. Again, it's my speculation, but if they are doing this right now and censoring it, that is a very, very, I would say, a crime, literally, because you are destroying these stories in the present, because people appreciate, want to appreciate these things as they come out, and you should put out authentic reprints of that, because you had authentic reprints in the what I would say, the hardcover books. So yeah, and then again, the KFC Fisher Syndicate is still there. So that something Muthu or Prakash Publishers or V Comics, whoever it is, needs to be mindful of. Yeah, so that's everything I was to say. So thank you very much, and happy phantoming.
Thank you very much, fellas. Okay, we have made it, fellas. We're at the end of the podcast. So thank you one and all for listening and or watching us. Our website is chroniclechamber.com. Our email is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. We would love to hear your thoughts, feedback, and opinions on our social media platforms or over at the YouTube channel. And of course, if you do comment, we might just even put it up on the screen and read it out loud. You can subscribe to us via YouTube or through your favorite podcast apps, including iTunes or Spotify. Gents, thank you very much. It's been great to catch up with you all once again. So, Jermayn and Dan, happy phantoming, fellas.
500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die." The Phantom! The ghost who walks! The Phantom! Enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom. He fights